She was supposed to be Disney's next princess, a fresh face leading a billion-dollar remake of one of the most beloved fairy tales in cinematic history. But instead of fairy dust and fanfare, Rachel Zegler found herself in a nearly empty theater, watching her own movie crash and burn in real time. What was once hyped as Disney's bold new era turned into a PR nightmare so messy, some theaters didn't even bother showing the film for a second week. So how did it all go so wrong? Buckle up, because this story is anything but a happily ever after. Let's start with the crash. Disney poured over $270 million into its Snow White remake, and on opening weekend, it earned just $43 million. That's not a stumble, that's a faceplant off a cliff. And to make things even more awkward, Rachel Zegler, Snow White herself, was actually spotted watching the premiere with a small group of friends in what looked like an abandoned theater. Her friend posted a now viral Instagram story screaming Rachel's name when it appeared on screen. Rachel laughed, but behind the laughter, a train wreck playing out in real time. In one cringeworthy clip, the group walks up to a theater employee and says, "2 tickets, please." When asked, "For which movie?" they awkwardly pan the camera to their Snow White souvenir popcorn bucket. That's not a flex, that's a funeral. What was supposed to be a magical premiere ended up feeling like a high-budget haunted house, completely deserted, eerie in its silence, and full of uncomfortable laughter trying to mask the pain. For an actress once branded the future of Hollywood, this was a brutal fall from grace, and it was only the beginning. To pour salt on the wound, the box office comparisons were relentless. The Little Mermaid remake opened with more than double Snow White's numbers, despite its own share of controversy. Even Dumbo outperformed it, and Dumbo was never supposed to be a tentpole release. That level of failure is hard to spin. Analysts began referring to the film as a case study in how not to handle a modern remake. From bloated budgets to poor timing and tone-deaf marketing, the Snow White reboot became an industry-wide lesson in what happens when hype collides with hubris. Naturally, the internet didn't hold back. An old clip of Zegler resurfaced. In it, she passionately declares she hopes fans will wait in line to see her films, just like people do for the broken-winged victory statue in the Louvre. Fast forward to now, the only lines are online, roasting her. Critics were brutal. Memes flooded the timeline. Some joked about starting a GoFundMe to help Disney break even. One user summed it up, "Welcome back to reality, princess." Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit turned Zegler into the main character of the week, and not in a good way. Her confidence, once admired, was now twisted into a meme-worthy level of delusion. The internet thrives on irony, and this flop was gift-wrapped in poetic karma. Even celebrity commentators jumped in. Some defended Zegler, blaming Disney's direction, while others questioned how someone so media-trained could still miss the mark so badly. But no matter the stance, everyone agreed. This was no ordinary flop. This was a digital spectacle. Influencers even began creating breakdowns of Zegler's past interviews, analyzing the red flags leading up to the film's release. It became a trend, a full-blown internet sport, to predict which moment would come back to haunt her next. And with each clip, the audience grew more fascinated. And just when you thought things couldn't get more humiliating, rumors began swirling that Disney was quietly pulling Snow White from theaters across the US. Showtimes vanished from cinema websites. Entire listings disappeared just days after release. Multiple fans reported trying to book tickets only to find the movie nowhere in sight. Was this a glitch, a coincidence, or was Disney trying to quietly bury its $270 million blunder? Industry insiders claimed it was damage control. No studio wants a dead movie stinking up the weekend lineup. And Disney, they seemed more than happy to let this one fade into the background. Several industry analysts pointed out the rarity of a studio pulling listings this quickly without any formal announcement. It wasn't just poor performance, it was a ghosting. And when a film becomes too toxic to even promote, that says more than any critic ever could. Audiences who had originally been curious were now curious for a different reason. How fast can a studio erase its own movie? Snow White's quiet removal became part of the story, proof of just how far Disney was willing to go to distance itself from the fallout. For loyal Disney watchers, this move sparked a deeper concern. Was this the beginning of a new trend where controversial content gets pulled rather than defended? And if so, what does that say about the confidence the company has in its creative direction? But the drama didn't start at the box office. It started months earlier, behind the scenes. Insiders say Disney execs were already on edge about Zegler. Her interviews were going viral, but not in a good way. She was openly critical of the original Snow White, dismissing the romance and calling Prince Charming a stalker. She said the 1937 storyline was weird, not exactly a great way to win over Disney's core fan base. But things really spiraled when Zegler took the stage at Disney's D23 event and ended her gratitude speech with a bold political statement. Execs reportedly went into full-blown panic mode. Suddenly, this wasn't a film rollout, it was damage control. The problem wasn't just what she said, it was how consistently she kept stirring the pot. Her interviews became landmines, and Disney, instead of leading the narrative, found itself constantly cleaning up behind her. It was like they'd handed their marketing campaign to a walking PR crisis. Behind the smiles at press events, there was real tension. Disney insiders revealed that meetings were held weekly just to prepare for whatever Zegler might say next. At one point, she had to be coached not to speak about the original film at all, a nearly impossible request for someone starring in its remake. Privately, some executives reportedly discussed whether they should delay the film altogether or recast press responsibilities to someone else. But with Zegler as the face of the entire project, the risk of sidelining her carried its own brand of backlash. And just when you thought things couldn't get more chaotic, enter Jonah Platt, son of Snow White producer Mark Platt. In a now-deleted Instagram comment, he blasted Rachel Zegler for sabotaging the film's promotion with her political takes. According to reports, Mark Platt even flew to New York to personally meet with Zegler and beg her to tone it down. She didn't, and the chaos continued. The studio was so desperate, they hired a social media expert to approve all of Zegler's posts leading up to the premiere. But by then, the damage was done. Jonah's comment wasn't just family frustration, it was insider confirmation of everything fans suspected, that the actress was out of control, that Disney was scrambling, and that what we were seeing online wasn't even the worst of it behind the scenes. Jonah went as far as to say this was about adult responsibility, calling out not just Zegler, but the entire team that let her run wild with the studio's image. And when your producer's son is openly dragging the lead actress before the premiere's even over, you know the damage is deep. His words sparked further debate online, with some praising him for speaking out, while others criticized him for airing internal disputes. Either way, it turned private dysfunction into public drama, exactly what Disney didn't need during a bombed rollout. Meanwhile, things with co-star Gal Gadot were falling apart too. The tension first went public at the 2025 Oscars, where the two awkwardly presented together. But the real drama exploded online. Zegler made a cryptic Instagram comment calling Gadot a professional pageant queen. Fans saw it as shady, insiders agreed. And then came the real issue: politics. Zegler had publicly posted in support of Palestine, while Gadot, who served in the Israeli military, became the target of intense backlash. Disney had to beef up security for Gadot, who was reportedly facing safety threats due to Zegler's posts. What began as a co-star collaboration quickly became a social media Cold War. Behind the smiles on press tours were frosty stares and mutual silence. Even Disney insiders admitted the two were no longer speaking off camera. And that tension was impossible to hide. Rumors swirled that separate dressing rooms and staggered interview times were arranged to keep the two from crossing paths more than necessary. While both actresses maintained professional facades in public, the body language told a very different story, one that fans and reporters quickly picked up on. As the film's release drew closer, insiders whispered that the Gal versus Rachel feud was as big a concern for Disney as the negative box office forecasts. If co-stars can't stand each other, it becomes nearly impossible to sell the chemistry needed for a beloved fairy tale, especially one already mired in controversy. At this point, Zegler had basically become a walking controversy. Her comments trashing the original film, her offhand political statements, and her general dismissiveness toward the legacy of Snow White all combined into one giant PR nightmare. In interviews, she said the original love story was weird. She laughed about not needing a prince. She insisted the new Snow White was a leader, not defined by a man. Which, okay, fine. But when you're adapting one of the most iconic romance stories ever made, maybe don't lead with how much you hate it. What stung even more for longtime fans was the sense that Zegler didn't respect the story she was chosen to represent. It wasn't just criticism, it was condescension. And for audiences already skeptical of reboots, that kind of energy was a deal breaker. Critics argued that Disney was caught between appeasing modern sensibilities and preserving timeless charm. Zegler's outspoken takes tilted the balance too far, making it seem like Disney was trashing its own heritage rather than celebrating it. For viewers who grew up loving the original, the shift felt disrespectful. Worse, every interview clip that went viral took on a life of its own, spawning reaction videos and heated debates about woke culture, feminism, and Hollywood's obsession with rewriting classics. Instead of uniting fans, the film fractured them, all before it even hit theaters. And the drama didn't stop with Zegler. Peter Dinklage stepped in to slam Disney's entire concept. He criticized the remake for being progressive on the surface, but still relying on what he called a backward story about 7 dwarfs living in a cave. Disney quickly tried to pivot, promising to take a different approach. That different approach? CGI dwarfs. Fans were horrified. The charm of the original characters? Gone. Replaced with uncanny valley weirdness that no one asked for. The backlash was instant. Instead of celebrating diversity, Disney was accused of erasing real roles for real actors. And once again, their attempt at modern progress ended in old-school failure. They tried to please everyone and pleased no one. Critics noted that the dwarfs had been key to the original film's heart and humor. By turning them into CGI stand-ins, Disney removed the unique personalities that made Snow White's relationship with them so memorable. It wasn't just a visual misstep, it was a storytelling one. Even among those who supported updating the dwarfs' portrayal, the consensus was that Disney's approach felt hasty and poorly executed. Scrambling to avoid offense, they ended up offending even more people, particularly those who felt dwarfs should have been portrayed by actual actors with dwarfism. Now, when Disney believes in a movie, they go all out. Red carpets, celebrity interviews, global press tours. But for Snow White, Disney did none of that. Instead of a glamorous Hollywood premiere, they held a quiet daytime pre-party. The European premiere shoved into a remote castle in Spain, far from any cameras or fans. If you didn't know the movie existed, you wouldn't have found out from Disney. It was less of a launch and more of a retreat. No spectacle, no stars, just a silent signal that the studio wanted this over with, and fast. For Disney, this wasn't just a failed movie. It was an embarrassment they were desperate to forget. Industry watchers compared it to a funeral procession rather than a premiere. Invitations were limited, press access was minimal, and even the cast looked subdued. It was the polar opposite of the hype Disney usually banks on. In the end, the muted premiere confirmed what everyone suspected. Disney was bracing for disaster. By lowering expectations and avoiding traditional fanfare, they hoped to contain the fallout. But in an era of social media oversharing, silence can sometimes speak louder than any PR statement. So, what happened here? Disney tried to reimagine a beloved classic, but in doing so, they alienated their core audience, ignored decades of nostalgia, and handed the mic to a lead actress who couldn't stop starting fires. The result? A $270 million catastrophe that Hollywood will be dissecting for years. And for Disney, the lesson is simple. You can update the visuals, modernize the dialogue, even rework the ending. But if you lose the soul of the story, audiences won't follow. And no amount of CGI or hashtags can save a film that forgot its magic. Fans are still split on whether Snow White deserved all the hate or if the backlash was overblown. But one thing's certain, the remake turned into a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the mightiest studio on Earth can't force audiences to fall in love with a story they feel has been disrespected. Meanwhile, rumors swirl about which Disney classic will get the next modern treatment, and whether the studio will learn from Snow White's mistakes. Viewers are left wondering if the House of Mouse has truly lost its spell, or if this is just a bump on the road to the next billion-dollar blockbuster.